Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from the Redolescence channel, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate your viewership. And in today's episode, I'm very excited because we're going to be going over the top 10 closest clones to Creed Aventus, so stay tuned. So this video has been in the making for a very long time. I have in front of me about 15 clones. We will have some honorable mentions to start things off, but I want to say that just because I'm making this video doesn't necessarily suggest or imply that I think Creed Aventus is one of the best fragrances of all time. I think fragrance is something that is very subjective, so just because I love Creed Aventus doesn't necessarily mean the next person will, but it's a fragrance that has worked really, really well on my skin. And the one caveat that I want to posit for your consideration is that if you want to smell like Creed Aventus, buy Creed Aventus. So these are all clones. Some of them come very, very close, but of course these are all substitutes, not replacements for the real thing. I personally really love Creed Aventus. I own 2 bottles of it. This is the Z01 batch that goes back to 2011, so I've been wearing it for the past 6 years now. And this is one of the newer batches. I purchased this one a couple years ago. Actually, my wife purchased this for me. I wore this on my wedding day. I wore it all throughout my honeymoon, and I'm currently empty. And then I have a big decant bottle that was actually given to me by my friend Freddie, so thank you so much for that. No juice in it now, but with that being said, I don't have every single Aventus clone that's ever been released in front of me here, so there are some that you're not going to see in this list. I don't have Supremacy by Afnan. I don't have Poseidon's Elixir or Poseidon's Elixir 2.0. Although I've smelled a lot of them, and some of them do come pretty close, I'm just going off of the fragrances that I have in my collection. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. These are going to be ranked in order from the ones that smell the least like Aventus to the ones that smell the most like Aventus. So my numbers 1 and 2 are going to be very, very close to Aventus. So with that being said, number 10 on this list is by the company Jeroboam, and it's called Vespero. And this one I actually put at number 10 because despite it opening up with that Aventus gene, the pineapple, the apple, that sweet, fruity, citrusy opening, it actually dries down to something quite green, and that's where I think it takes a very different turn from Aventus. So this is a very green iteration of Creed Aventus, definitely worth checking out, and the price is very reasonable. Extrait de Parfum, 1 milliliter bottle, composed by Vanina Muracciole. Number 9 on this list is a fragrance by a company that you're all familiar with. This one is Bond number 9, and this one is called HTTP. This is their online offering, and it represents their digital neighborhood. And what I really like about this one is that it is different from Aventus. There are some out there who would argue that this isn't even an Aventus clone, in very much the same way that people would argue that Cedrat Boisé by Mancera is not an Aventus clone. But this one is very saccharine to my nose. It has this almost candied pineapple feel up on top. So this is a much sweeter iteration, ergo it not being a little bit higher up on my list and only ranking in at the number 9 spot. Number 8 on my list is a fragrance that I think is pretty linear. It doesn't necessarily have the base or the weight to it that a Creed Aventus does. This one was composed by Jerome Epinette. It's a relatively recent release, but it seems to have already been phased out from stores. Jerome Epinette has done many fragrances from the House of Byredo. This one is not from Byredo, although some say that Byredo has their own Aventus clone, but I beg to differ. This one is called Vibrant Leather from the House of Zara. It has that same Aventus opening, but it's lacking the Aventus dry down. I think this one is very transparent, very linear, but it's also very easy to wear. This one unfortunately cannot be found online. For the rest of these, if I do find links to where you can purchase them online, I'm just going to leave them down below. But Zara fragrances unfortunately cannot be bought online. But I think this one was really cheap. It was like 20 bucks. So if you can find it in your Zara retailer, if they do have old stock, definitely pick it up before they clean their stock. The next one on this list is another one from the House of Bond number 9. I just got to call a spade, and this one is called The Scent of Peace for Him. Now, the first fragrance that they released was actually this one right here, The Scent of Peace for Her, which has the dove on it with the olive branch in the mouth. And that one smells like Light Blue for Her by Dolce & Gabbana. This one has some nuances from Aventus in here, but at the same time, it has a similar note that is found in Light Blue for her, but also in the scent of peace for her. So this is almost like an amalgamation of Creed Aventus and the scent of peace for her. And yeah, I guess they just chose some elements from Creed Aventus to make it a bit more masculine, but this seems more like a combination of two fragrances rather than it trying to be an Aventus clone. So at the end of the day, I don't think this was intended to be an Aventus clone. It just has some similarities in there. And then the next one on this list is an old one. This one is by the company Lamani, and it's called AB Spirit Silver. Hard to open this bottle. Pretty cool bottle though. Definitely a lot of liquid for what you get. It can also be found online for a very, very inexpensive price. The only thing about this one is I feel it's very compressed. One of the things that I love about Aventus, it's almost like when you spray it on, you smell it in the air. It's almost like you're smelling a fragrance in 3 dimensions. This one, on the other hand, has a very flat olfactory texture, which is why I didn't put it a little bit higher up on this list, but I think for the price and what you're paying, it's a pretty decent alternative. I think there is one in this list that's a little bit better than AB Spirit Silver, and that is Unpredictable Adventure by Glen Perry. At one time, this was actually the closest Aventus clone. It seems to have fallen in the ranks a little bit, but what I liked about this one is that it actually had the birch that Creed Aventus and some of the older batches of Creed Aventus contained. And the birch was one of the distinguishing characteristics, and birch was one of those ingredients that really provided a contemporary masculine feel to the King Aventus. And this one utilized it very well, but unfortunately there are some fragrances that have been released as of late that have actually managed to get it a little bit closer. And whenever I think of birch, I think of this number 4 spot, and it's actually going to be a tie. I have by Parfum Vintage, Beyond Noir and Noir Intense. Both of these fragrances smell quite similar to one another. There are actually times when I have a hard time differentiating one from the other, and the original can be thrown into this mix as well, but these two smell remarkably close to Creed Aventus, so I'm only going to put one of them here to represent them both, but they have that birch tar note in there that makes it very evocative of Creed Aventus. Number 3 on this list is a fragrance that when I smelled it, I could have sworn up and down that this was the closest clone to Aventus, but I have done a lot of side-by-sides in preparation for making this video, and sure enough, there are some fragrances out there that beat it, but again, for the price, I know they can be found online, a small size for like 20 bucks, so check it out. Again, links are going to be down below. This one by The Gate Paris is called Snowflakes. Really, really like this one. There are times when it evokes the same exact memories as Creed Aventus, so for that reason, I put it really high up on my list. And I want to get into my number 1 and 2 spot, but a bit of a caveat here, both of these can be interchangeable. I think they're both rather close to Creed Aventus, and depending on how I wake up in the morning, my number 2 can be my number 1, my number 1 can be my number 2. So before I announce my top 2, I just want to get into some honorable mentions. So the first honorable mention is actually the very first Creed Aventus clone that ever hit the market, and a huge shout out goes to Coach Rob619 for really bringing this to everybody's attention. This one from the House of Willem Dean is called Fresco. You can still find this online. The only thing is that it opens up very lemony, and although it has nuances of Creed Aventus in there, it becomes very flat, and it's very transparent. I know that was one of the criticisms that I gave to Vibrant Leather by Zara. This one is in the same wheelhouse. The next honorable mention is from the house of Tiziana Terenzi, and it's called Orion. This is another fragrance that I don't necessarily think was intended to be a Creed Aventus clone, but it does come pretty close. The only thing is that this is a much woodier or woodsier iteration of Creed Aventus. And then the third and last honorable mention is from the house of Atelier Cologne. This one is called Musk Imperial. Believe it or not, this does not contain any pineapple, but it has a note of fig up there that when a lot of people smell it, they equate it to the smell of Creed Aventus, but it's a very different note breakdown. It's definitely in the same family though. All right, so let's get into it. My number 1 and 2 spots. Remember, my number 1 can be my number 2. My number 2 could very easily be my number 1. But the way that I'm feeling them right now, this is going to be my number 2. This one from the house of Al Haramain is called L'Aventure. And this one gets it so close to Creed Aventus. I was quite surprised when I was wearing this on skin one day and I went to work, and the whole day I kept thinking that I was wearing Creed Aventus because I actually ran out of this bottle pretty recently. So when I was wearing this, I was wearing it in place of this one. This supplanted it. And the whole day I thought that I was wearing Creed Aventus. But sure enough, it's such an incredible, incredible clone. It can be had online for a very inexpensive price. So check it out if you haven't. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into my number one spot. This is a fragrance that I've had for some time now. I have praised this on my channel before. A lot of you have probably already guessed it from the onset, but I've just got to stay true. I just smelled it again today in making this list, and it just reminded me of how close of a clone it actually is to Creed Aventus. And I'm very proud to announce this as my number one spot, and I think I'm going to end up buying a second bottle. But this one from the house of Armaf is called Club de Nuit Intense for Men. This one has everything. It has a little bit of that smoke. It has the sweetness from the vanilla and the amber in the base. It has a bright, fruity, citrusy opening, very unorthodox in its approach with the pineapple, the apple, the bergamot. It has a little bit of sweetness and a fruitiness attributed to the black currant, and then it dries down. It's very non-linear. It has that same progression, and it advances from stage to stage the same way that the King Aventus does. Honestly, I'm so happy to have Club de Nuit Intense for Men in my collection. Whenever somebody asks me for an Aventus clone, I always recommend them this one, and so far, I don't really think I've encountered anybody who's been disappointed by it. I think it's an incredible clone, and I want to thank you guys for tuning into this video. And these have been my top 10 closest Aventus clones with 3 honorable mentions. And with that being said, I want to open up a giveaway to my subscribers. This will be both domestic and international. And I am going to be giving away this travel atomizer of L'Aventure by Al Haramain. This is actually my number 2 pick. So I was actually going to decant them, and then I noticed that I had this 8 ml travel atomizer, really cool. Just flip it up like this. So I'm willing to ship this anywhere in the world. The only thing you have to do to enter the giveaway is just leave one comment down below. Of course, you have to be subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and then leave a comment down below and tell me, what is your favorite Aventus clone? Is it HTTP? Is it Le Monnier Beat Spirit Silver? Is it Club de Nuit Intense for Men? Let me know, what's your favorite clone? And also, if you haven't tried any of these, just say, hey, I haven't tried any Aventus clones. And if you don't like Aventus, say, hey, I don't like Aventus. But I will still be willing to ship this worldwide. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're a newcomer to this channel, please stay subscribed for more videos like these upon giveaways, top 10s, unboxings, and a lot of other fragrance-related content. Don't forget to like this video if you like it. And also, remember to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. This way you never miss any of my future content. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.